The night of March 12, 2026, will be etched into history as the moment the Middle East truly stood on the precipice of a total regional conflagration. For 3 agonizing hours, the skies over the Levant and the Persian Gulf were painted red by the exhaust trails of hundreds of drones and heavy ballistic missiles. This was not a symbolic strike or a mere gesture of defiance. It was Operation True Promise 4, the most violent and concentrated bombardment ever launched by Tehran. As Americans, we are forced to ask the questions that haunt our dinner tables. Are American troops in danger? Is our sons' and daughters' blood once again the price for stability in a land thousands of miles away? With Iran now deploying a terrifying new class of 2-ton bunker buster warheads, weapons designed to wipe out entire command centers in a single flash, the shadow war has officially ended. We are witnessing a new era of warfare where the U.S. and Israel are being tested not just by numbers, but by a strategy of pure exhaustion. As we watch the news from our living rooms, we must look past the headlines. We are no longer just looking at a regional skirmish. We are seeing a direct challenge to the U.S. presence in the world, one that threatens our economy, our security, and the very stability of the global order. Can we still avoid World War III, or has the first shot already been fired? In the early hours of March 12th, the world witnessed the full operational debut of the Khorramshahr 4, also known as the K-Bar. While previous Iranian missiles were often dismissed as reconditioned Soviet tech, the Khorramshahr 4 represents a quantum leap in lethality. Weighing nearly 30 tons at launch, this behemoth is capable of delivering a 2-ton, 4,400 pounds, warhead across a range of 2,000 kilometers. To the average observer, a 2-ton warhead is just a number. To military experts, it is a bunker buster designed for one purpose: to destroy the most hardened underground facilities. Iran's Revolutionary Guard, IRGC, specifically targeted strategic hubs, including the Hyla Satellite Communications Center and military installations near Haifa and Tel Aviv. The sheer kinetic energy of these warheads, combined with their Mach 16 re-entry speed, makes them nearly impossible to stop without a direct multi-layered intercept. However, the most alarming aspect for the American taxpayer isn't just the power of these missiles, it's the cost of defense. Iran is currently employing what analysts call a strategy of saturated attrition. By launching waves of low-cost suicide drones, Shahed series, alongside older mass-produced missiles, they are forcing the United States and Israel to deplete their stocks of high-end interceptors. An Iranian drone may cost $20,000 to produce. A U.S. Navy SM-3 interceptor costs nearly $10 million per shot. The math is brutal. Tehran isn't trying to win a dogfight in the sky. They are trying to bankrupt the U.S. defense budget and empty the missile magazines of our carrier strike groups. As Lao Nam Gok speeds up Operation Epic Fury to retaliate, the depletion of our missile reserves could leave other theaters, like the Pacific, vulnerable. For the American people, this is a war of the wallets, as much as it is a war of the trenches. Every intercept in the skies over Baghdad or Tel Aviv is a withdrawal from a bank account already strained by domestic inflation. While the world's attention is fixed on the exploding horizons of the Middle East, a far quieter but equally dangerous development occurred in the halls of the Kremlin this week. On March 11, 2026, the Russian government approved a series of legislative amendments that fundamentally expand President Putin's authority to deploy the Russian armed forces extraterritorially. On the surface, the bill claims to protect Russian citizens from persecution by foreign courts or illegal detention abroad. However, seasoned analysts view the timing of this move as anything but coincidental. By creating a legal framework that allows the Russian military to intervene anywhere a Russian citizen is deemed under threat, Moscow has essentially handed itself a blank check for military intervention in global hotspots, specifically Iran, the human shield strategy. The concern for the U.S. and its allies is the presence of thousands of Russian technical advisors, engineers, and military contractors currently stationed within Iran's defense and nuclear infrastructure. Under this new law, any accidental or collateral strike by Israel or the U.S. that affects these Russian nationals could be used by Moscow as a formal casus belli, justification for war, strategic hedging, and intelligence sharing. Russia's role has already shifted from passive observer to active spoiler. Intelligence reports from March 6 indicate that Moscow has been sharing high-quality satellite imagery and sensitive tracking data with Tehran. This information reportedly includes the precise real-time coordinates of U.S. warships in the Persian Gulf, flight patterns of Allied aircraft operating under Operation Epic Fury. This war of signals is eroding the decades-long technological dominance the U.S. and Israel have enjoyed in the region. By helping Iran see the battlefield, Russia ensures that the conflict remains costly and prolonged, effectively pinning down American diplomatic and military resources that would otherwise be directed toward Eastern Europe. The bottom line for Americans: for those of us who remember the tense standoffs of the Cold War, this feels like a dangerous deja vu. Moscow is not just supporting a partner. They are using the Iran conflict as a laboratory to test how far they can push the U.S. without triggering a direct Third World War. As Russia positions itself to fill the vacuum left by disrupted oil supplies from the Strait of Hormuz, the Kremlin stands to profit from the very chaos it is helping to sustain. As the fires burn in the Middle East, a different kind of heat is being felt here at home. For the American senior often living on a fixed income, the geopolitical maneuvers in the Persian Gulf aren't just headlines. They are line items on a monthly budget that is suddenly stretched to the breaking point. The $120 barrel and the stranglehold at Hormuz. The math of global energy is unforgiving. Since the outbreak of hostilities on February 28th, the Strait of Hormuz, the world's most important energy artery, has seen traffic plunge from 20 million barrels a day to a mere trickle. This effective blockade by Iran has sent global oil benchmarks into a tailspin. Brent crude briefly skyrocketed to nearly $120 a barrel this week before stabilizing around $102. The International Energy Agency, IEA, has labeled this the largest supply disruption in history, surpassing even the shocks of the 1970s. The sting at the pump. While the U.S. is the world's leading producer of crude oil, we are not immune to global market shocks. Across the nation, the average price of a gallon of regular gasoline has surged. Before the conflict, $2.98. Today's average, $3.58, with some states like California already seeing over $5.30. For many, a 20% increase in fuel costs in just 2 weeks is a shock that ripples through every other aspect of life. President Trump has characterized these price hikes as a very small price to pay for national security. But for those watching their pennies, the cost feels anything but small. The inflation ripple effect. The danger of $100+ oil isn't just the cost of filling up the tank. It is the cost of everything the tank moves. Groceries. From fertilizers to the diesel that powers the trucks delivering produce, energy is baked into the price of every loaf of bread and gallon of milk. Analysts warn that if these prices are sustained, overall consumer inflation could jump by another 0.3 to 0.5 percentage points this spring alone. Utilities, natural gas, and electricity prices are also under pressure. Qatar, a massive supplier of liquefied natural gas, LNG, has halted production amid Iranian drone threats, causing global gas futures to double. The Federal Reserve. This sudden energy tax complicates the Fed's plan for interest rates. With inflation stubbornly staying above the 2% target, the hope for lower rates, which many seniors rely on for a stable housing and credit market, is fading into the distance. The safety net strategy. In a historic move on March 11th, U.S. and IEA member countries agreed to release 400 million barrels from emergency reserves, the largest coordinated release ever. While this may provide a temporary cushion, it is a finite resource. Until the security of the Strait of Hormuz is restored, the American wallet remains on the front lines of this conflict. As we reach the midpoint of March 2026, the question for every American is no longer if the world has changed, but how long this new reality will last. The initial shock of Operation Epic Fury has passed, but in its wake, We are left with a Middle East that has been fundamentally reshaped. With the assassination of the previous supreme leader and the rise of Mojtaba Khamenei, the U.S. is no longer dealing with the Iran of yesterday. We are dealing with a regime that feels it has nothing left to lose. The forever war versus peace through strength, the Trump administration has remained steadfast in its peace through strength doctrine, asserting that these overwhelming strikes were the only way to prevent a nuclear-armed Tehran. However, for the American senior who remembers the long, drawn-out conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, the fear of a Vong Lei quagmire is real. The victory condition. The White House has defined success as the unconditional surrender of Iran's nuclear and missile programs. The reality, with the Strait of Hormuz still effectively closed and Iran shifting to ghost tactics, using mobile launchers and underwater drones, a clean, decisive end to hostilities remains elusive, a fragile off-ramp. Is there a way out? Diplomatic channels, primarily through Oman and Qatar, remain open but frozen. Iran's new leadership has demanded a total withdrawal of U.S. forces from the region as a prerequisite for reopening the oil lanes, a demand that Washington views as a non-starter. What to watch in the coming days? The Cyberfront FBI Director Christopher Wray has warned of imminent retaliatory cyber attacks, Nam Vao, the U.S. power grid and financial institutions. For those of us at home, staying vigilant against digital disruptions is now as important as monitoring the front lines. The Russia-China pivot. Watch closely how Moscow uses its new extraterritorial laws. If Russia moves to protect its advisors in Iran, the risk of a direct superpower confrontation increases exponentially. Domestic stability. As long as Israel and the U.S. remain in a state of high-intensity conflict, the war tax at the gas pump and grocery store will continue to test the patience of the American public. The 2-ton threat described in our opening is more than just a missile. It is a weight on the global order. As we move forward, the strength of America will be measured not just by the size of our bombs, but by the resilience of our economy and the wisdom of our leaders to find a path that secures our interests without sacrificing another generation to the sands of the Middle East. To understand where we are going, we must summarize exactly where we stand as of March 13, 2026. The conflict between the U.S., Israel, and Iran has moved past the point of no return, evolving into a multi-front war of attrition that touches every corner of the globe. 1. Military dominance versus guerrilla persistence. The U.S. Department of War, led by Secretary Pete Hegseth, has confirmed that Operation Epic Fury has successfully annihilated the bulk of Iran's conventional navy and destroyed over 60% of its known missile production facilities. However, the laser-focused mission faces a persistent threat from mobile, hidden launchers, and a new generation of Iranian underwater drones. For the American taxpayer, this means that while we control the skies, the ground and the sea remain volatile and dangerous. 2. The cyber ghost front. Perhaps the most direct threat to the American homeland is not a missile, but a line of code. Following the establishment of Iran's Electronic Operations Room on February 28th, we have seen a 700% increase in cyber attacks targeting U.S. infrastructure. From local water plants to the regional power grids that heat our homes, the war has moved into our digital backyards. Vigilance is no longer optional. It is a requirement of modern citizenship. 3. The geopolitical realignment. The killing of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and the rise of his son Mojtaba has not led to a collapse of the regime as some predicted. Instead, it has pushed Tehran closer to Moscow. Russia's new extraterritorial laws mean that every U.S. strike carries the risk of hitting a Russian advisor, potentially triggering a direct conflict between nuclear superpowers. The world is no longer unipolar. It is a fractured landscape where regional powers can now challenge the U.S. with disproportionate effects. 4. The economic new normal. With the Strait of Hormuz effectively a no-go zone for major shipping firms like Maersk and CMA CGM, the global supply chain is being rerouted around Africa. This adds weeks to transit times and dollars to the price of everything from gasoline to fertilizer. Even with the massive release of strategic oil reserves, the era of cheap energy is on hold until the security of the Persian Gulf can be guaranteed, the final word. As we look toward the rest of 2026, the resilience of the American spirit will be tested. We are witnessing the Trump doctrine in its most aggressive form, a total commitment to crushing threats before they reach our shores. Whether this leads to a lasting peace or a decade of stagnation depends on the strength of our alliances and our ability to endure the economic fury that war always brings.